I'm Beverly, and I'm on the witness stand. Welcome back, guys, to the witness stand, and boy, do we have a show for you tonight. At first, I thought I was going to have to break this show up into maybe 3 parts, but I don't know. I'm going to try to keep it to 1, but it'll probably be a little bit longer than what we normally do. And if I see it's getting too long, well, then I'll just separate it out into 2. What in the world could we be talking about that's going to take up this much time? Well, I'll tell you. Becky Hill. The rise and fall of Becky Hill. Now, Becky Hill, who is she, you might say? Well, I'll tell you. Becky Hill was the Colleton County, South Carolina clerk of court. And she was elected in 2020. Elected, too. Anyway, she was elected in 2020, and she's the officer of the court. So she's pretty much an administrative figure. She takes care of all jury care. So, making sure they have things to eat, making sure they're, everything is for their comfort. Making sure they know what's going on, when to be back the next day, all that kinds of stuff. And let me just tell you, guys, I've been working on this for a while, and I have narrowed it down to, guys, I've got notes here. You're just going to have to bear with me from going back and forth to my notes and talking to you, because there's so much. And I may start talking to you about something and then have a little bit more to add to it later on. So you might see me being my normal self and being out of order. And I hope I don't confuse you. But if you have any questions, or if I have confused you, put them in the comments. And before I go forward, please like, share, and subscribe. That really helps my channel, and it really helps me know that there's a lot of you out there that are like me, that like to discuss what's happening. And the juiciest, I say that like it's really a good thing, but it's not, because there were murders. But if you follow true crime, then this is a good one. And I was obsessed with it, and that's exactly what got me started with Witness Stand. I was obsessed with it when it first came out, watched it all the time, as I've said in previous parts of this. And when I thought, I could go back and rehash the trial, I should have known. I should have known how much this was going to be. But here I am. So, again, as we go, piece by piece, there may be some pieces left out that I insert later, okay? So just bear with me. We're just talking. We're having a conversation anyway, and that's the way I like it. Okay, other thing. In the comments, I read that Sheila asked if we were going to do one on Becky Hill. And Sheila, I was working on it when you said that. And so I was really happy to hear that one of my viewers wanted this part. So we're going to do it. I do want to say that she played a very significant role. Well, it was during the trial, but we didn't really find out until after the trial. But she played a very significant role. And this is almost, well, it is a trial within a trial. So, okay, here we go. I told you, she was elected in 2020. And she was really the person who did juror care. I told you that, taking care of the jurors. And she had, she made, I don't want to say friends, but she was very friendly, and that's what you're supposed to do if you're doing clerk of court business. You're supposed to be very friendly and very personable, and definitely somebody that the jurors can ask, questions, not about the case or anything like that, but, that they can go to find out answers to their questions. Well, she did do that. She definitely did do that. But I've never seen a clerk of court that was ever so involved in a case. But everything Murdaugh is murky, mysterious, mayhem, and this was a lot of it. Again, this man's never going to get out of prison, no matter what happened here. He's never going to get out of prison, even if by the miraculous manna from heaven, whatever, came and he was found innocent in this second trial. Well, you know what? There's a difference between innocent and not guilty, right? They find you not guilty because there's reasonable doubt, but they never find you innocent because they don't really know. You know what I mean? Even if it came out to be a non-guilty, which it won't, but if it did, then he's still never getting out of prison because he's already admitted to these horrendous financial crimes, which we'll get into later on in this recap. Remember, the trial starts early April of 27. And if you think for 1 minute we don't have enough information on this trial to keep going forward, we'll probably fill up that year getting ready. Okay, I digress. You know how I get. Okay, so Becky is supposed to be completely neutral to this process. And it would appear that that was not necessarily so. During the 2023 trial, which I still can't believe it's been that many years, because it's still consuming us. I mean, it's consuming all of us, trial watchers. National media just descends upon Walterboro, and Walterboro is about northwest a little bit from Charleston. It's about an hour drive from Charleston. Walterboro is in Colleton County, and that's where all of these crimes took place, and that is where they did the trial. I was thinking at first that they had changed the venue, but I went back and looked at where Moselle was, the family property and all of that, and no, it was in Colleton County. I don't know where I got that in my head. I knew it when the trial was going on, but I don't know where I got that in my head. Maybe because they're asking for a change of venue now. I don't care where you put him. I think he's still going to be found guilty. Becky Hill, she starts to become very visible during this trial, which is not what is supposed to happen. But there are little rumblings here and there about clerk of court Becky Hill. So nobody's really understanding exactly what is happening and what is going on and why she is in the midst or being talked about. But, everything comes to light. One of the things that was told in the appellate process, which overturned the verdict, was Becky Hill's impropriety with the jurors, with conversations that she had. And some of the conversations was not just at the end when they were getting ready to do verdict, but just even parts of it was during the trial. But some of the comments that she had said was, don't be fooled by the defense. Well, that's impartial, isn't it? Watch Murdaugh closely. And also remember that she knew the whole Murdaugh family because, she's in the court system down there, and that's what they did. They had this stronghold down there in Colleton County. And then she said, look at his movements and his body language. Well, I'll tell you about some body language right now. Remember all the snot I said? I can't get it out of my head. Oh, I can't get it out of my head. It's like gross. It's like nightmarish. Ghoul. If I had to describe my scariest monster coming after me in a nightmare, it would be him shirtless with snot drooling, and slowly but surely coming towards me. And you know what would be the only thing that would kill him? A Kleenex. Yep. I digress again. Okay, and then she told them, like, toward the end of the verdict, where they were getting ready to go to verdict watch, she told them that this was going to be an important or epic day. And then she said, Lord have mercy, then she said, this shouldn't take that long. I've worked a little bit in law enforcement and court system, probably where I got all this from, and we're a family of law enforcement. But again, I digress. I bet this is my thing, y'all. I just digress all the time. And if you were sitting with me out here on the porch, we would be with a glass of iced tea, and we would be either swinging or rocking, and I would just be telling you this stuff like a conversation, and I'd go off on all these different whims, and I guess that's what we're doing. I sound a little bit like I've had too much caffeine today. Okay. I remembered that when she came back to the stand, later when she had to come back and they had to question her, Judge told Toal, and let me find exactly what she said, because she said something that was so great. These judges will say things that are just so memorable. Okay. Retired retired South Carolina Chief Justice Jean Toal conducted hearings after the trial was over, and then all these things came to light, to see if she felt like there had been enough to warrant a mistrial or an overturning of the verdict. And she said that Hill's comments were improper, and that Hill's denials about everything was not credible. But she said she denied that there was going to be a new trial, because she said that the defense had not proven Hill's comments actually affected the verdict. She also found Juror Z, which we'll talk about later, explanation of being influenced, inconsistent, and unconvincing. And that would become the heart of the Supreme Court appeal later on. This is the same she said. When she was talking about Becky Hill, she said she concluded Hill wanted to write a book, believed a guilty verdict would help sales, and had been attracted by the, get this, siren call of celebrity. I love that. I might have to cross-stitch that. Siren call of celebrity. Okay. So that was when they decided, Harpootlian and Griffin decided they wanted to try and get it overturned. You know how they always do an appeal. And all of these things started coming out, and they started using them for the appeal process and see if they could get it overturned, and obviously they did. She was alleged to have made a comment that defendants rarely testified. Well, we know that. We do know that they don't usually, because they're their worst witness. But you're telling a juror or a jury that, you're really giving them a hint, I believe, at what they should or should not believe. I believe she's steering, let me put it that way. And then jurors said that she also mentioned, pay attention to Alex because you should not trust his defense. You can see how this was easily overturned. But hey guys, it's good for us. We get to see it all over again. Now, I don't know. I keep wondering if Becky Hill will be drawn back into this. Will she be part of the testimony of the second trial? I kind of don't think so, because there was one juror that became famous. Not because she wanted to, but they called her the egg juror. And an email was sent to Judge Newman, and it said that she had been talking about the trial to some people, and he questioned her, and he brought the jurors in and he questioned her, and apparently he felt that it was taking too much of a chance to let her stay on, and he asked her if she had anything back in the juror room that she needed to take before leaving. Very nice. He was nice, she was nice. And she said, yeah, a carton of eggs. And he said, eggs? And she said, yes. So one of the jurors, apparently they raised chickens and brought in eggs for everybody. And that'd have to be a lot of eggs and a lot of chickens. But anyway, she had hers back there and she wanted to go get those fresh eggs. And so she became nicknamed the egg juror. So let's talk about her just a little bit. Myra Crosby was the lady that was referred to as the egg juror. One of the things that was brought to Newman's attention was an email was sent in, and it was later found that a lady named Christine Avery had sent this email to Judge Newman and said that at a point where Crosby was delivering a refrigerator to her tenants, I don't know anything about the tenants or that Crosby had tenants or whatever, but that when she went there to deliver this refrigerator, that they were discussing the case. Now, the tenants told Avery this, and Avery wrote the email to Judge Newman about it. But when Myra was asked about it, she said that this was completely harmless, and that she believed that Avery had taken a conversation apparently about pizzas being delivered to the courthouse and turned that around into an accusation of juror misconduct. It doesn't really, it sounds a little bit weird, but coming on the fact that you've got another complaint about her too that Becky Hill took to Judge Newman, it really gives one pause there to see if, or to think if this was real or targeted. Becky Hill brought to the judge a separate story about a supposed Facebook post by Crosby's ex-husband. Now, there's whether the Avery or Hill incidents were connected, it's still disputed and it remains unproven, but it sure is coincidental, right? And so why would we think that Becky Hill would do that? Well, we think that she was on the fence about Murdaugh, or she hadn't made up her mind, because they were way into the trial, but not over. So there was still more evidence to hear, and I think that's a good thing that she was still thinking about the evidence and had not made a decision. I think you make a decision, remake the decision, remake the decision, go back and forth the whole time you're listening to a trial. And that's what you're supposed to do. And then you go back and debate and then come to a conclusion. But it was said they thought that she might be leaning toward a not guilty for Alex, and Becky Hill was not happy about that because only a guilty verdict would help publish or help sell her book. The book. Let's talk about the book a little bit. The thing that a lot of people questioned was how the book came out so fast, within months of that trial ending and the guilty sentence. That book came out. Yep, the book came out. Well, that book, let me tell you, I thought, like I think everybody thought, that it was going to be some behind the scenes, tidbits and stuff. And so I bought that book. There might be some of those books out somewhere, like on eBay or someplace like that. Don't waste your time. It really is a waste of time. And I was pissed and wanted my money back when I did this. What I think the book really was she got it Behind the Doors of Justice, the Murdaugh murders. I think it was Behind the Doors of Justice. It's all about me, Becky Hill. She talked about her daughter. Oh, and her daughter apparently, and she talks about this in the book, was brought up in the jury pool to be considered for a juror. And she was really excited about that. Don't you think that would have been a conflict of interest? But I think this woman thought her daughter would get on, but her daughter did not. So, but she talked about that a lot. She talked about her daughter. She talked about her family a lot. Talked about how she had come to the office of clerk for, like her career. She talked a lot about her career, and which was nothing outstanding, and it was not really anything anybody wanted to hear about because we kept looking for the good stuff, right? And then came some stuff that made me want to go, And this was before any allegations had come out about jury tampering or anything like that. She said, let me get my notes. The book. Okay. Some statements attributed to her. She said that, I told you jurors later said that during the trial she made comments to watch Murdaugh closely, commented on his body language, suggested he was lying, encouraged jurors not to be fooled. I did hear that a few times. And appeared eager for a quick verdict. Why? Because some think she was writing that book all along. It was disputed by Hill, but multiple jurors described that over and over. Okay, let's talk about that book. Some of the things that she said in that book, which in my notes, which I told you I've got everywhere. So there was one thing, here it is. There was one thing that she talked about was that she had accompanied 3 jurors, and their names was, and all this has been reported. I'm not revealing anything. It's all been in the news, and they were on the Today Show. So she accompanied these 3 jurors to New York to the Today Show, and the jurors were Amy Williams, Gwen Generette, and James McDowell, and they went to NBC Today Show for interviews, and of course Becky was there. In the book, she started talking about how they were arriving at LaGuardia, which is a really beautiful airport now. It's completely revamped itself. Before, I would never have flown in there, but now it's nice. So if you go to New York, get LaGuardia. Anyway, she arrived in LaGuardia and was taken by car into Manhattan and stayed at a really nice New York hotel. Eating at a restaurant on Madison Avenue. And then learned some personal information about one of the jury's financial difficulties and talked about it in the book. And she said that the jurors were enjoying their 15 minutes of fame in the Big Apple. Do you think you would have talked about that in the book? Because I don't. I don't think I would have wanted to say that, because that really looks inappropriate. It does to me. And I know that once the trial's over, jurors can say anything they want to. They can write books. They can do interviews. They can do anything they want to do. But I find it unsettling that Becky Hill, being the presiding clerk of court of Colleton County, would write that book. And just a couple of months after, or a few months after the trial ended. That makes you think, I don't know if you could write a book that fast. Can you? I mean, some incident in your life, some big incident in life, could you write a book that fast? I don't think I could. So it makes sense that she was kind of writing it all the way through the trial and then got it out as quick as possible and really wanted that guilty verdict so that, you know, it would sell books. But she did take them to New York, and I still wonder why somebody in Colleton County didn't bring this to the attention of, it's got to be some ethics thing down there or whatever. She's got to have a boss. But it's just weird. It's very weird that she would go with these jurors. That doesn't make any sense. But traveling with them, standing alone, it's not necessarily illegal, but it does make you wonder, especially about what she had done before the verdict. This is my baby, Atticus Finch, and he is named after my favorite character. I just can't stop looking at you. My favorite character in a book, Atticus Finch, the lead character in To Kill a Mockingbird. Again, it's a legal drama, and I guess it runs a theme through my life, doesn't it? But he's with me everywhere I go, and he sits in here while I film, but this time he made a little bit of noise, so I think I'm going to let him out. So y'all bear with me while I take him out of the room. Now, I'm going to reiterate again. Told the jurors they'd become famous, predicted the reporters would want to interview them, gave jurors reporters business cards during the trial. My God. Oh my God. Pressured them to participate in a group media interview immediately after the verdict. And then she went with them to New York. And then in the book, she wrote about the visit to Moselle. And I'm just going to try to read a little bit of this. Okay, in the book, she wrote about the visit to Moselle. Moselle being the property. There's a passage in there that, and I remember reading this, and I thought, oh my God, I just never have heard of such. And I wondered then, when I was reading the book, is this going to cause some problems somewhere? Because if I was Alex's attorney, it would cause me some problems. And if I was the district attorney, the prosecutor, Creighton Waters, I would be sitting back going, I want this lady done with. And I bet he had something to do. I bet he had something to do with her downfall. Or maybe, okay, I'm just, it's amusing. But one of the passages in there, just let me read this. Hill wrote that people from the courthouse, law enforcement, and the jury seem to have had an epiphany at the property and silently shared their conclusions through their eyes. She finished with, I knew and they knew that Alex was guilty. Put her in jail. Right now. Put her in jail. Nothing else to say. That's quite a sentence, right, for a clerk of court who's supposed to be neutral to say who this person is caring for the jury. Now, I don't know what she said, if anything, during the trial to the jurors about this, but she said it in a book. She put it in her own words in a book. So, that becomes evidence. It's written down. The problem was not simply that Hill personally believed Murdaugh was guilty. It was that she appeared to have claimed a shared and silent understanding with the jurors before deliberations began. Also, according to the defense, Becky Hill was also seen walking away from the group with the jury foreperson in the Moselle visit. So it just leads credence to what they were saying about her having the conversations that she shouldn't have been having with the jury. It looked like, yeah, I could see that. And then she wrote that while she was writing back from Moselle, see, it was all about her. It was all about her. But she really dug her grave in this one. It's funny to say. But anyway, while riding back, she and others in the vehicle discussed the case and reached their own unanimous guilty decision in about 3 minutes. The jurors were in separate vehicles, so this was not proof that she had discussed the guilt with them during the ride. Still, it showed that the supposedly neutral court official had firmly decided that Murdaugh was guilty before the actual deliberating was started. It also showed how emotional and personal she was taking this case, right? Now, why would she do that? I thought at first, okay, well, maybe it's because she knew the Murdaugh family and she liked the Murdaugh family. I don't know. Sometimes in a situation like this, and I was getting ready to say backwoods, but it's not. I don't like to say that about the South anymore because I don't think we are. Some parts. But I think in every place, even like in New York City, it doesn't matter. Corruption is corruption. And I believe that sometimes people act like they like people and they really don't like them. So maybe the Moselles weren't respected, and maybe they were people were afraid of them. Maybe that's why nobody spoke out against them. Power breeds corruption, and I don't know about the brother Randy. I mean, he's still in that law firm, but I got the feeling that what in my research was that the elder solicitors that were Murdaugh's, they might not have been so great either. So I just think it was power and corruption. And then, did Becky take advantage of that? I think she did. I think she maybe used some of her knowledge of the Murdaugh family. And she knew Alec because they were in the same courthouse all the time. So she knew him. But I don't know what kind of relationship they had. I don't think it was, I think it was courteous. I might have even been friendly. I don't know. But it had to be weird to be down there in that courthouse. But she was just too emotionally involved. And she was taking it very personal. And now you have to wonder if it was because she wanted to sell the books. I think so. Hill wrote in that book that she believed Murdaugh was guilty, but feared his family's influence and goodwill in Colleton County might result in an acquittal. Well, that would be terrible for her book, wouldn't it? We're not even going to worry about Maggie and Paul. Let's just worry about her and her book. This is some good part. Okay, so during the 2024 evidentiary hearing, she explained that some dramatic sections in the book was taken as literary license. So when you are saying literary license, you're saying that it might be blown up a little fictional and dramatized. Okay, dramatized, whatever. But she still, the book, she says, basically was true. There's so much more that came out in that book. But, I'm sitting here telling you this, and it sounds like the book is really great, but it's not. It's all about her, but there were tidbits, there were pieces that you could pull out. I think I spent $20 on that book, and that was the worst $20 I ever spent. Because I think you could probably Google most of this and get this information. Okay, she talked about the egg juror in the book, and she said that she saw a Facebook post supposedly written by the juror's ex-husband suggesting that the juror had discussed how she planned to vote, but the original post was never produced. So Becky Hill said she saw it, but it wasn't there anymore. I know that Judge Newman had to weigh the consequences of a mistrial versus an appeal. And when you watched him, I don't think he wanted to release her, but I think he just felt like he was in a place where he could not allow any impropriety. So, he dismissed the egg lady. The defense argued that the apology post relied upon came from a different man with the same name. The dismissed juror's actual ex-husband denied making the original post. Hill privately questioned the juror instead of taking the information directly to Judge Newman. She did that before she took it to Judge Newman. It's not her business. And then she allegedly asked that juror which way she and the other jurors were leaning. What in the tarnation was she doing? We're not talking about somebody who has no knowledge of the court system and no knowledge of how trials work. She's the clerk of court, for God's sakes. And, I don't know why she's not sitting in prison right now. We'll talk about where she is. But the Supreme Court described Hill as having mistakenly attributed to the social media post to the juror's ex-husband. And the defense went further and accused her of fabricating the story to remove a juror she felt might vote not guilty. That's what I think. That's what I think. The 13th juror here, that's what I think. And so it comes down to Becky Hill being brought back into a hearing and asked a lot of questions, especially about the book. And the big pieces were, how did the book get written so fast? What did she say to all of these jurors? Were jurors targeted, like the egg lady? Was she targeted to be removed because of what her vote potentially was going to be, and again, I'm not even going to go into that, but it was just so improper. Everything about that thing was improper. Siren call of celebrity. I'm going to cross stitch it. Siren call of celebrity. And that's where she was seen. She knew that this was going to be a really big case and she was going to write a book. And because of who she was and behind the scenes, she'd make a lot of money off of it. And I think she did make a lot of money until people, I think it got around that people thought this was a crappy book. And so people stopped buying it. But then, of course, this other stuff happened and it made people, people couldn't buy it anymore. So, the book was really remarkably damaging because it placed her own thoughts, opinions, ambitions, and relationships with the jurors and the interest in publicity on paper. She described herself, listen to this, reaching a guilty conclusion before deliberations. Believing jurors silently shared that conclusion, worrying that Murdaugh might be acquitted, traveling with jurors for national television appearances, and enjoying the excitement surrounding the trial and its aftermath. Siren call of celebrity. Okay, let me go back and plug some holes. Let's talk a little bit more about the book because I found this out in the hearing. I did not, I didn't realize it when I was reading the book, but I found out later in the hearing that Hill, I told you she invoked that literary license, right? So in December of 2023, which is in the same year of the March 23 guilty verdict, plagiarism was discovered in that book. I swear, chat, guys, chat. If you're worried about plagiarism, plug your information in there and let it tell you if it's being plagiarized. If it is, one, you either credit the person, or two, you completely rewrite the thought, okay? But you always go right if you credit that person. God almighty. Hill admitted using a BBC reporter's material. That's where she got her plagiarism from. So, the book was withdrawn. Now, what does that mean? The book was withdrawn. I was wondering about that because I thought, if the book was withdrawn, does that mean people get their money back? Because I'm still waiting for my $20. And it hasn't happened yet. But, again, let me get through my notes. Okay, it means it was taken out of circulation. So you couldn't buy it anymore, like brand new from wherever she had it. I think I got mine off Amazon. I'm not sure, but and again, you can still get copies. I don't think there would be any in the library because they frown upon that plagiarism thing in the library. But I know you can find them somewhere. It might even be worth more than $20 now because of the infamy that it's become. I ended up donating mine. I probably shouldn't have because it just sort of spreaded lies. But anyway, I donated mine because I thought it was, I did, you know what I did do? I passed this around to my daughter and my niece who were all into this murder trial. And then we donated it. Okay, so nobody that we have any record of was refunded from the book. We don't have any record that she had to repay loyalties. And we don't have any record that she had to compensate BBC or the reporter or pay restitution because of the plagiarism, which I kept wondering, what was the restitution? Because she had a total of $11,880 restitution when she had her trial. She pled guilty. She pled guilty to I have never, I honest to God have never seen notes in such a big mess. Okay, let me go back. There was in March of 2024, which was a year after the verdict, she resigns. She should have, because all during that year there were issues being talked about. In May of 24, 76 ethics violations were instigated against her. 76. And then on May 25, she was arrested on 4 charges. And then in December of 25, she pleads guilty to the following: obstruction, perjury, and 2 misconduct counts. She received 3 years probation, community service and restitution, and what was really important about that was she was never charged or found guilty or pled guilty to criminal jury tampering. You know, maybe this was a plea bargain, that if she pled guilty to the other 4, that they would drop this one, which is serious. She would have gotten prison time for that one. So my question became then, what was the restitution for? Because I really thought it had something to do with paying something back on the book. And it comes down to, oh my God, it came down to prosecutors said, and apparently this was part of the plea deal too, but they said that she took nearly $10,000 from federal incentive funds intended to improve child support collection. She gave it to herself as a bonus. And approximately $2,000 came from the clerk of court office funds. Bonus for her. So that's where it came up to almost $12,000. But to her guilty plea hearing in December of 25, she brought the check and paid for it all. Now, as far as the money for the book, we don't know what she did with her portion of the book, but Neil Gordon, who helped co-author that book, he didn't know anything but what she was telling him. I think he was like a ghostwriter, but he found that she had copied 12 pages of the preface from an unpublished BBC draft. Remember, I told you, you just credit. You're out of the woods. You just credit. But he decided to take his portion of the proceeds, and he donated it to organizations honoring Stephen Smith and Gloria Satterfield, which will be another piece of this trial that we'll talk about in another episode. Because real distinction here is that the book was withdrawn because of plagiarism, and the restitution she had to pay from unauthorized government bonuses. This lady was a piece of work. You know, when you work in the court system or in law enforcement, you're exposed to stuff every day. You are exposed to criminal behavior, misconduct, ethics violations. You're exposed to that, and you see it, and you see the consequences of it. But people still do it. People still do it. And I think sometimes, I guess sometimes it blurs the lines. Maybe you get too comfortable or complacent. Maybe you get too, maybe you build a relationship that's too friendly with, and I'm not talking about romantic, I'm talking about I'll scratch your back, you'll scratch mine kind of deal. Maybe that's what you do. I don't know. But I honestly can't believe how somebody in her position, knowing everything she knows about the court system and the judicial system, could get herself in this much of a mess. I really don't understand how the plagiarism comes about, because, you know, your book may be an opinion, but if you're alleging things, it should be fact checked. And if you're talking about something and you're a ghostwriter, well, then you ought to be able to go in there and make sure that nothing is going to fall back on you. And see, this guy, he is now a part of this story, and he's got his name attached to something that was plagiarized. And if you're an author, that is not a good way to go down, right? Okay, so what happened next? Like I said, she resigned, she pled guilty, she faced litigation from Murdaugh and became the central figure in one of the biggest courtroom ethics scandals in recent memory. This is the case that just keeps on giving. She did not free, and we need to make sure we understand this, she did not free Murdaugh. She did not do that. She didn't erase any of the evidence. She didn't prove that he was innocent in any way. What she did was compromise the integrity of that trial and made it so that there was possible appearance of prejudice with the voting, with the verdict. And so a new trial was ordered. And I think that was fair. Bev's opinion, I think it was right that they reversed this verdict and had the trial over. The court wrote that she had placed her fingers on the scales of justice. I think we've heard that before. And then they described her actions as shocking jury interference. So why didn't she get charged with that jury tampering? Unless that was part of the plea deal. And the court said it was a breathtaking and disgraceful effort that denied Murdaugh his constitutional right to an impartial jury. I don't think it can be said any better than that. So that's Becky Hill. I really enjoyed it, and I know I was disjointed, but everything about Becky Hill is disjointed, and it's hard to follow in chronological order. And I did that, and then I would go and pull stuff about. All right, let me go back to my book and let me see what I thought was important in that. And the New York trip really stood out for me, and that Moselle visit. We will get back to the next piece, because what I want to continue with this trial is talking about specific people, specific parts. So we will be doing a piece on Stephen Smith and Gloria Satterfield, because that is very important. We'll get to Alex the attempted murder of Alex. We'll get to that. And I want to bring in certain characters, and I don't mean characters like they're not real, but they were characters to this overarching story of this murder. There were different attorneys and friends and family members and people like that were big contributors to the trial. So we'll get to talking more about that. So in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this, and if you do have questions, just please post them down in the comment section and we'll get to it. And that's where I can get some information about what other information y'all are really wanting for me to concentrate on, because I have lots of concentrated areas. I just want to know that I cover what you guys are thinking about. And, let's discuss it. Let's have an open discussion. I really love that conversation. And if you would do me a big favor, like, share, and subscribe, because that does so much for my channel. And I really appreciate each and every one of you. And until next time, you may step off the witness stand. I'm Beverly, and I'm on the witness stand.